It was a crisp spring morning in 1998 in the quiet town of Seabreeze, Oregon. The morning air carried the scent of blooming flowers as my mother, Rose, left for her shift at the local diner. My stepfather, Jackson, claimed he had errands to run and left shortly after. I, Marissa, went about my routine, cleaning up after breakfast. As I stood at the sink, immersed in the rhythmic clinking of dishes, I suddenly felt a hand grip my waist tightly. Startled, I froze, my heart pounding. I turned to see Jackson standing there, his eyes dark and intent. His breath was warm against my neck, sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. "Good morning, Marissa," he whispered, his voice unsettlingly close. His presence felt invasive, and the familiar kitchen seemed to shrink around me. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, making it clear that he was in control. I was 22 years old, and my life had been relatively simple until then. My father had passed away when I was young, leaving my mother to raise me on her own. She was strong, independent, and had always been my pillar of strength. However, everything changed when she met Jackson. Jackson was charming, with a youthful appearance that belied his years. His smile could light up a room, and his deep green eyes seemed to see right through you. At first I thought his interest in my mother was genuine, but as time went on, his attention shifted towards me in ways that made me uncomfortable. One evening, as I returned home from college, I noticed Jackson watching me intently. His gaze lingered a little too long, and the smile he offered felt more predatory than warm. I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was imagining things. A few weeks later, after a particularly exhausting day, I decided to take a relaxing bath. I left my clothes hanging in the bathroom and slipped into the tub. When I emerged, refreshed but weary, I noticed that my underwear was missing. Puzzled, I searched the bathroom, but it was nowhere to be found. I confronted Jackson and my mother in the living room, hoping for an innocent explanation. Jackson's calm demeanor and nonchalant shrug did little to ease my growing unease. My mother, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension, suggested I might have misplaced it. The incident left me feeling vulnerable and exposed. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jackson was behind it, and the thought sent a chill down my spine. The unease didn't stop there. I began to notice shadows moving outside the frosted glass door of the bathroom. Each time I took a shower, I felt as though someone was watching me. The silhouette would linger, then disappear before I could confront it. At night, the sensation of being watched grew stronger. I would hear faint footsteps outside my room, and the hallway, usually a comforting part of the house, became a corridor of fear. My heart would race with every creak of the floorboards, each sound amplifying my anxiety. I confided in a friend, hoping to find solace or at least some validation. She suggested I install a small camera in the hallway, just to be sure. Reluctantly, I agreed, not realizing how this decision would change everything. The camera captured what I feared the most. Late one night, as I reviewed the footage, my heart sank. There was Jackson, standing outside my room, his expression unreadable but his intent clear. He lingered for a few moments, then walked away. I felt trapped. Confronting him was out of the question, as I feared what he might do. I decided to keep my distance, avoiding being alone with him as much as possible. But the house was small, and escaping his presence was nearly impossible. One fateful evening, my mother had to work late. Jackson and I were left alone in the house. I tried to stay in my room, but the sense of impending doom was overwhelming. I decided to confront him, to tell him I knew what he was doing. As I stepped into the living room, Jackson was waiting. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "Yes, we do." What followed was a conversation I hadn't anticipated. Jackson confessed that his feelings for my mother were a facade. He had been drawn to me from the beginning, and his marriage was just a way to be closer to me. His words were like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. I was horrified, but Jackson was relentless. He suggested we keep this a secret, to continue as if nothing had happened. His calmness was unnerving, and his confidence in controlling the situation was terrifying. I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't let this continue, but I also couldn't risk my mother's happiness. I needed a plan, something that would expose Jackson without putting myself in danger. I reached out to a trusted family friend, Detective Logan, who had known my mother for years. I shared everything with him, from the missing underwear to the surveillance footage. He assured me that he would handle it discreetly. What I didn't expect was the revelation that followed. Logan informed me that Jackson had a history of manipulating women. He had done this before, marrying older women to get close to their daughters. This was his pattern, and I was just his latest victim. With Logan's help, I set up a meeting with my mother, Jackson, and a few close friends. I presented the evidence, and Jackson's mask finally slipped. His calm demeanor shattered, and he lashed out, accusing me of trying to ruin his life. My mother was devastated, but she stood by me. Jackson was arrested, and the nightmare that had consumed our lives began to unravel. The aftermath was painful, but it brought my mother and me closer. We leaned on each other for support, rebuilding our lives one day at a time. The house, once a place of fear, became a sanctuary again. Speaking out had freed me from Jackson's control, and it had saved my mother from a life of deceit. Our bond grew stronger, and we found solace in the love and trust we had always shared. This experience taught me the importance of listening to my instincts and the strength to face my fears head-on. Life in Seabreeze continued, and so did we, stronger and more united than ever before.